Hi, welcome back to my kitchen. Today I want to show you a real treat, and that's a free-form apple walnut tart that is beyond flaky and delicious and fruity. It is so good. So, first thing you need to do is make a fantastic flaky pie crust, and there's really an art to it. So let's get started. I have my food processor, and I do that so that I don't overmix. And I'm going to use two types of flour. I'm going to use all-purpose flour, which I'm putting into the food processor. 1 cup, half a cup of some whole wheat flour. I like the nutty quality that it gives to the tart, really, really nice. And this is a free-form tart, so it's super easy. It's peasant food. It's very easy to do. And just a little bit of salt. And then we're going to pulse it. You don't want to overmix the pie crust, so we're just going to pulse it. This is just our dry ingredients. That's enough. And now, the tenderizer of a pie crust, the butter. You need a lot of butter. So we have 1.5 sticks, and I'm just going to get that over the flour. And we're only going to mix it until it is pea-sized pieces, or it sort of looks like coarse oatmeal. That's the key to a flaky pie crust. So just a few pulses. This is flaky pie crust etiquette 101. All right, let's take a look and see. Little big, let's do one more second or two. Just until it's pea size. Because if you see them, that's where your flakiness is going to be. One key point when you're making a flaky pie crust is you want your butter to be super cold and you want your water to be ice cold. Okay, so once you have your pea-sized pieces of butter, we're going to put in about 1/3 cup of icy cold water and a teaspoon, that's my trick, a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. And that's going to help our pie crust roll out beautifully because it sort of denatures some of the proteins. Now we're going to pulse it just until the water is absorbed by the flour. Not too much. The key is not to overmix. A pie crust that's overmixed is a tough pie crust. So at this point, you can see inside I just have clumps. I'm going to dump it into this bowl. And it doesn't look very much like a pie crust right now, but don't worry because it will. All right. And then I'm just going to, with my hand, just sort of push down and gather it into a ball. And then we're going to chill it for about 20 minutes to allow the butter to re-chill and get cold so that we can roll it out and have a beautiful flaky crust. So once we get this together, you're not kneading it, you're just gathering it. Be gentle with it. Be gentle. All right, so we're gathering our mixture into a ball. Do not overmix because this is when you don't want to develop any extra gluten. And those are those proteins that are in the wheat flour that actually cause our crust to be tough. Now we're going to cover it in plastic wrap and we're going to flatten it into a disc. And I want you to see something very important. Look at those chunks of butter in there. That's going to create flakes in the oven. Beautiful. Now we chill it for 20 minutes. After you put your pie crust into the refrigerator to chill for 20 minutes, preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. We want to get it nice and hot. Now I have a pre-chilled pie crust, flaky pie crust, all ready to go. And it's nice and firm. You can see it's nice and firm. We're going to flour our surface, our work surface, and you want to make sure that you flour it very generously. You don't want your pie crust to stick. And you want to make sure you take a little flour and flour your rolling pin. Remember, it's very rustic, but it still needs to be rolled out. Now, I'm covering it in flour, if you notice, and then I'm going to roll down and I'm going to rotate. So every time I roll a couple of rolls, 2 or 3 times, I'm going to rotate it and make sure I can move it. If you can move it, it won't stick, and that's a good thing because a sticky pie crust is going to be a problem to get into the pan, to get into the oven, and we don't want to have a problem. So look at the butter. You can see the swirls of butter in there. That ensures that we're going to have a flaky pie crust. I am very, very confident of that. If you see your rolling pin needs a little more flour, give it to it, you know. put a little on there and just sort of smear a little flour on there and then keep rotating. You want to get a 12 to 14 inch rough circle. If it's not perfect, don't worry about it. If it looks like the state of Texas, don't worry about it. But you do want to get it a round-ish shape. Remember, this is rustic. This is peasant food. It was wonderful to be a peasant. And if you were eating this beautiful, beautiful apple walnut tart. So I think we're almost there. Now at this point, I want to make my filling first. All right, so before we put our apples on our flaky pie crust, we're going to make this beautiful little filling. Very simple. So half a cup of coarsely chopped walnuts, a quarter cup of granulated sugar, and 3/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and 3 tablespoons of flour. Be a nice little thickening agent, and just mix it together, and there you have it. Now that we have our beautiful walnut and sugar and flour filling, we're just going to sprinkle it all over the bottom of our tart crust. So all we're going to do is spread it, but leave about a 2-inch border. This is where the free form comes in. And just make sure that your walnuts are all over the place. And then I have 4 Gala apples. Now you can use any apples you want. I peeled them, I cored them, make sure all the little inside is out from the core, and you're just gonna dump them on, for lack of a better word. Again, peasant food, super easy. And we're just gonna spread it out so that it's sort of in the same vicinity, except it's on top of the walnuts and that filling, but it's not covering the border. I have 1 egg that I've beaten, and I'm gonna take a pastry brush, and I'm gonna brush around the edges. This is gonna act like glue. So that when we do make our border and we do flip up our sides, it will stick. All right. Before I do that, I'm gonna take 3 tablespoons of butter. Everything's better with butter. And I have a few little tiny tablespoons, 3 tablespoons, and I've just put little tiny, I cut them up into little tiny dice. And I'm just gonna scatter them all over the place. This is gonna add to that beautiful, appley, buttery, yummy filling. Oh, it's so good. I can smell the cinnamon. You can smell the apples. Spectacular. All right, now you ready? We're just gonna fold. You're gonna fold this up and press. Fold it up and press. Don't worry about anything. Don't worry about imperfections. Don't worry about it's not perfect. This is peasant food at its best. You're just gonna roll it, fold it, and push down on everything. You don't like apples? Use pears. You can even add some berries to this. Push down on it. Now, I'm gonna get a special tool and I'm gonna lift it up and put it onto a parchment-lined pizza pan. So I have this parchment-lined pizza pan, same size, about 14 inches, and I'm gonna move it. You can also use 2 spatulas. So let me go get that. I'm gonna shush this under here and move it over. Just move it on top of your pizza pan. Very easy, and then just reshape. Okay, so the last thing you want to do is egg wash it, and then we're going to sugar it with about a 1/4 cup of extra granulated sugar. So 1 extra 1/4 cup. And you just want to sprinkle that over the entire tart. And don't be skimpy on the sugar, because this will cause some beautiful caramelization in the oven and will actually make the flaky layers delicious. Get every little area, and the egg wash will help it to stick. All right, so we're gonna sugar this baby up. There we go, all that sugar on there for some nice crunch, and now into the oven. All right, it's been in the oven for 40 to 45 minutes, and look how gorgeous this is. You have to appreciate this. Golden, gorgeous, flaky crust with sugar on top. The apples are beautifully browned and slightly caramelized on top. I gotta get a bite of this. I gotta get a slice. So, I'm gonna cut into this. I cannot help myself. I'm gonna put some on a plate. Look at that inside, isn't that gorgeous? I wanna try this beautiful pastry, but I want you to appreciate something. So I'm going to break open this crust, and you see how flaky that is? You gotta come closer and see this. You gotta see how magnificent this is. Look at all the beautiful flakes, and that's when the butter melted in the oven and left these beautiful spaces, and that's creating that beautiful flakiness. I'd like to share some tips for success to get the flakiest pie crust ever. Number one, make sure your butter is ice cold. This is very important. And number two, make sure your water is super icy. So I always put it in a pitcher with some ice cubes first, let it get super cold, then measure it out. And number two, never ever overmix your pie crust. If you do that, you're gonna end up with a tough crust. Just gather it gently, and you'll have a beautiful pie crust every single time. So until next time, I'm Chef Gail Sokol. Thanks for joining me.